Let's look at a theory Japanese fans still talk about.
I won't let the old man's sacrifice be for nothing. He said that. And then, one provocation later, he stopped walking. One taunt. And suddenly everything everyone died for is gone. Japanese fans have spent over a decade arguing about whether that's actually true. Look at the question mark. Akainu put a literal question mark over his own taunt. He didn't even know what he said. The rest of the Whitebeard crew heard the exact same words and kept walking. Luffy was already begging him to stop, and Ace, just Ace, turned around. But the other side isn't backing down. That is Ace. Someone drags his captain through the dirt and you want Ace to just nod and keep jogging? The version of Ace who does that, I don't want to read that guy. Okay, but here's what that argument runs into every time. He literally just said he wouldn't waste the old man's sacrifice, seconds before. If walking away was the right call, and he knew it was, what does it mean that he couldn't do it? Not that he didn't want to, that he couldn't. That's not a failure, that's a character truth. He never followed orders. He went after Blackbeard against Whitebeard's direct wishes. He was always going to be the one who broke ranks. And here's where it gets uncomfortable for me, personally, because I've heard that argument 100 times and it almost works. Except, in Japanese discussions, people often talk about this moment as something beyond a bad tactical call. When a dying parent gives you their final words, it's treated, in those conversations, less like advice and more like a covenant. The old man stood up and absorbed everything, cannon fire, blades, his own crewman's blade in his chest so that his sons could live. That is what he was dying for. And breaking that, in the framing, Japanese fans keep returning to, isn't just reckless. It's a different category of wrong, onwo ada de kaisu, repaying grace with betrayal. Which is why, in Japan, this debate was never really about tactics. The old man's last act was to give his sons a way out, and Ace turned around anyway. I don't know how to answer that cleanly. I genuinely don't. But then someone reframes the whole thing, and I need a second with this. Did Ace die as Whitebeard's son, or as Roger's? Akainu called Whitebeard a loser. Ace, with the Whitebeard flag on his back, abandoned the final order, charged in alone, and lost. The man who was supposed to prove the family was real ended up proving Akainu right. Ace didn't die defending Whitebeard. He died choosing Luffy. Those aren't the same thing, and if you follow that, his final words change. Thank you for loving me. Not a dying son grateful to his father, a man who finally found what he'd been looking for his whole life, in his brother, in the fact that anyone came at all. Wait, are people actually saying Marineford was built around Luffy's character development? Because that's kind of horrifying. Yeah, that's the uncomfortable version of the read, and some Japanese fans land exactly there. None of that gives Whitebeard's men their lives back. Right, and the line that keeps surfacing in Japanese threads isn't about Ace himself. It's this: the real problem isn't whether Ace's death was meaningless. It's that Ace made everyone else's sacrifices meaningless for him. People died to get him out. The old man gave his final breath so his sons could live, and Ace, who loved Whitebeard, who meant every word, couldn't hold it together for 30 more seconds. The crew didn't come expecting a transaction. They came because that's who Whitebeard was. A father doesn't demand gratitude from his children. But that argument has a problem too. It lets Ace completely off the hook by making Whitebeard's love unconditional. It turns the old man's death into a blank check. Of course he would have forgiven Ace, so then nothing Ace does in that moment actually matters. That's where it refuses to settle. That's why the meme never died. Zero taunt resistance, still going years later. Not really a joke, the sound of people who couldn't make peace with what they felt. What do you think Ace was protecting in that final moment? Whitebeard's honor, Luffy's life, or something he'd been carrying since before he was born, something that not even Whitebeard's love had fully reached? Depending on how you answer, the whole war means something different.